Welcome to Satsuki Bonsai Demystified. I'm Rick Garcia. If you like what you're seeing in this video, please click the thumbs up icon and consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. In bonsai, regardless of the species that we work on, repotting is one of the most crucial tasks that we complete. Satsuki Bonsai is no different. It's so important that I'm going to be dedicating one, probably more videos specifically to the task of repotting. But sometimes with Satsuki, repotting isn't the right thing to do. And we're going to talk about an alternative to repotting today. And that alternative is removing just the top layer of soil. There's a lot of benefits to this technique, and I'll elaborate on those benefits as the video progresses. We'll also summarize those at the end of the video. Another thing I wanted to talk about is Satsuki Bonsai Demystified has its first troll. And I'll talk more about that in our summary as well. But before that, we've got some work to do. So let's get going. Here are the primary tools we'll be using in today's video. Using the root rake, start at the edge of the pot and work inwards towards the nebari. When encountering roots that are dense or tightly packed, rotate the root rake sideways and pull towards you. My preference is to work the outer region of the root ball first, all the way around the tree, so that I can focus exclusively on the nebari later. Now that we're well into removing the topsoil, this is probably a good time to discuss the usefulness of this technique. For our discussion, let's take a look at a close-up photograph of a Satsuki root ball just removed from a pot. Here, I've identified the three main areas of a Satsuki root ball: the nebari, the fine root zone, and the lower portion of the root ball. The subject of this video is the fine root zone. Please observe how the color of the roots in the fine root zone are darker than those in the lower region of the root ball. This is due to dirt settling into the soil surface and fertilizer residue that has descended into the fine root zone. If we leave these roots undisturbed, over time they will decay and the tree will become weak. Replacing the top layer of soil removes these roots and adds clean kinuma to the upper region of the root ball. Subsequently, roots grow into the new kinuma and the strength of the tree is preserved. This is the intent behind replacing the top layer of soil on a Satsuki bonsai. It's important to understand that the key to achieving healthy Satsuki lies in maintaining strong roots throughout the fine root zone. If these roots are weak, accordingly, your Satsuki will also be unhealthy. As we approach the nebari, it becomes necessary to slow down and work much more methodically. The roots that comprise the nebari are much more susceptible to scratching than the trunk or branches. And if we work carelessly around those roots, we can easily damage those bigger roots and cause them to die. And if those big roots die, you'll see that sections of the trunk will also die, as well as any branches that are associated with that root. So we got to work careful. What do? Don't use the root rake around the base of the tree. Use instead your chopstick and your root picks. Chopstick especially because there's a lower likelihood of scratching, and if you do scratch, it won't dig in deep. So just alter the tools that you use. And let's look at that now. With a chopstick, I'll work towards the nebari, trying to loosen up the kinuma particles before pulling them away. I start shallow while trying to discover where the roots lie beneath the soil surface. Once the particles in the roots are loose, it's fairly easy to pull them away. Once I've completed my first pass around the root ball, including the nebari, it's time to trim the excess roots. With this tree, I couldn't use root scissors because the space was too confined and I needed to be able to maneuver without breaking the lower branches or rubbing the trunk and nebari. With the brooms, I'll remove fine particles in preparation for adding new kanuma. I like to add the kanuma in 2 layers. This allows me to better integrate new kanuma with the top of the root ball and into the recesses of the nebari. Let me explain these odd-looking gyrations you're seeing with my hand and chopstick. What I'm trying to do is avoid crushing the kanuma particles as I work them in. Basically, I'm trying to wiggle them into place. The biggest mistake that people make when repotting their Satsuki is that they crush the kanuma by jamming it into place with either the chopstick or their fingers. After adding a second layer of kanuma, I'll work my way around the root ball, ensuring it is level and consistent. Okay, we've removed the top layer of soil and replaced it with a fresh layer of kanuma. Now it's time to finish this process off. How do we finish it? Mountain moss, or as some of you may know it by its Japanese name, yamagoke. In my book, I give a detailed description on why yamagoke is important, but for this video, we'll do the Cliff's Notes version. First, yamagoke insulates those surface roots. Next, it stabilizes the soil surface. It keeps those granules from moving around and breaking those fine root hairs. It also acts as a filter for fertilizer. It keeps the physical fertilizer from coming in direct contact with those fine surface roots. It also encourages a darker environment, which helps those roots kind of grow closer to the surface. And finally, counterintuitively, it actually aids in drying the soil out. I'll begin by filling the recesses between the large roots. Now it's time to add moss to the remainder of the soil surface. I add enough such that when compressed, it's about 1/4 of an inch deep. The procedure is finished by gently compacting the moss across the soil surface. Then, using my knuckles, I'll press down around the circumference of the pot. This helps to prevent water from getting under the edge of the moss when I water the tree. I'll close this segment out by answering a question that I think will arise in the comments. If you are hoping that I might be able to provide guidance on where you might be able to locate either Kanuma or Yamagoke, unfortunately I can't. I've been fortunate to bring my own supplies in from Japan, and I've never had to seek supplies outside of Japan. As a result, I just don't know who might offer these kinds of supplies. Okay, all we have to do now is simply return the tree to the bench, give it a final water, and it is done. It's important to know that this technique can be safely performed anytime between February and mid-May. So let's go ahead and recap some of the benefits to removing the top layer of soil as opposed to repotting. First benefit is this pairs really well with other techniques that we do with our trees. Techniques like wiring. And I use that example specifically because there was a question asked during the wiring video that I hesitated to respond to because there wasn't enough information to operate from. And I just don't want to give bad guidance. But here I can kind of give a response to that person that asked the question. If your idea was you wanted to wire the tree this year and this happens to be a year in which you repotted, I would suggest this. Instead of repotting, go ahead and wire, remove the top layer of soil, and you'll improve your drainage for the tree for another year, and then next year you go ahead and repot. And that's what's so great about removing the top layer of soil, is you improve drainage and it's not invasive to the root health of the tree. This works really well with other techniques, even with pruning, like I've done with this tree. This was a repotting year, but I wanted to prune the tree to stimulate more back budding. So instead, I went ahead and instead of repotting, I went ahead and pruned, replaced the top layer of soil, and next year I'll go ahead and repot. So whether it's pruning, whether it's wiring, this works really well in tandem with your other techniques. It's also a good temporary measure to improve drainage if you aren't able to repot. Let's say you got through spring and life happens. Time just got away from you. You knew you had to repot, but just didn't get a chance. It's okay. Replace the top layer of soil. It'll get you through the rest of the year. Next year you repot. Another use case for removing the top layer of soil is for those of you that prefer to put fertilizer directly on the soil surface. It's a great way to fertilize, but it can create problems with Satsuki azaleas. The residue from the fertilizer will descend down into that top layer of soil, and left in that top layer, it will cause those fine root hairs to decay. That results in a decline of the plant health. What you can do is, early the next spring, remove that top layer of soil, replace it with fresh Kanuma, and then you're effectively cleaning that problem out. Works great. Also, removing the top layer of soil is a great way to gradually revitalize the health of a weak Satsuki. If you want to begin a regimen of getting that tree strong again, start with removing the top layer of soil, and then you follow up the next year or year after when the strength increases. You follow up with a repot at that point in time. If you have my book, I cover this in a lot more detail in chapter 4, so be sure to go back and check that out. Well, we have our first troll. The way I see it is, I know I'm on the right track when the trolls begin to congregate under my bridge. I've seen this guy in other forums, and he's an amateur propagator who tries to make Satsuki from cuttings. The thing is, he admits to having no Satsuki as bonsai. However, he generously provides guidance and advice about Satsuki as bonsai, although he has no experience doing so. And I think we can all agree there's a huge difference between working with cuttings and working with maintenance and styling of Satsuki as bonsai. He's left a number of comments in my videos, and basically he repeats what I say in my videos and adds a little flair at the end to make it sound like he's offering something new. But it's been fairly innocuous until the pruning video. There he presented comments with bad information, and I called him out on it. And like most trolls who are insecure, he just kind of blew up. Worse, he went on to respond to other questions people had asked in their comments, and he gave them bad information. And I wasn't going to have it. I'm just not going to allow somebody to post bad information on my channel, because I can't always get back and correct it. And the problem is, if I leave that uncorrected, somebody else may come along and see that in a comment and think it's good information because it's on my channel. So he's basically free to go and create his own channel, his own mechanism, whatever, and present his perspective however he wants. But he is not going to appropriate my channel and try and further his agenda in my space. Not going to allow it. The thing is, I'm open to others' perspectives, but we have to operate with the same rule set. I'm here, you know my name, you're seeing me perform the techniques on video. We're going to see the results together on video. Anybody that has a different perspective to mine is free to go ahead and present their perspective, but you're going to have to reveal yourself. There's no pseudonyms. We're going to operate person to person. Also, you're going to have to bring with you evidence of the technique that you've done, whether it's in photographs or video, as well as the result. We can't just talk about something and expect everybody just to believe it. I'm going to do this stuff on video, so if somebody wants to bring an alternative perspective, all I ask is that you identify yourself and bring evidence of the technique and the results. It's not a problem. Finally, just be careful. I'm not always going to be able to respond to all comments and check the correctness of any perspectives that people add. So if you see somebody present something in a comment, take caution. Obviously, you're free to do it if you think it sounds right to you, but if I haven't responded to it, I would strongly advise against it. I have to apologize for kind of taking a negative tone here, but for good or bad, I see you as my people, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that the information you get is the best information about Satsuki Bonsai. I really want this to work for us. So, enough on that. Come on, trolls, identify yourself, present your information, and I think we'll get along fine. Another thing I wanted to do here as well is kind of give you some follow-up on the Hakure that we worked on in that last pruning video. So we're going to look at a couple of photos of Hakure after doing the same thing we did with this guy. Recall that if you saw that video, I mentioned I was going to be replacing the top layer of soil, and I did that, so here's some photos. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.